Well, I joined the new Park Lane Society before the merger. I was superintendent at Lady Lane at the time, and Park Lane were without a superintendent. And they came across and said, would I come across as superintendent? That was temporarily postponed on account of an operation which I haven't had yet. But after that, I went in as superintendent and was quite well installed before the merger. The last service in the old Park Lane church was a Sunday evening when I preached. It should have been the following Sunday morning, but just after, I think, the second hymn, the alert went, and of course the congregation disappeared, so that that closing service never took place.
What day would that be?
That would be the day war broke out. Then my youngest child was born about that time, with the result that when I was able to go to Park Lane, all the other people had taken most of the back pews, and I had to sit near the front, where I have sat regularly ever since, without regret. The Sunday school was in good heart. The teachers supported very loyally, and the next point of importance was when there was a question of moving the evening service to the afternoon because of the danger of air raids, and they wanted to close the Sunday school. The Sunday school superintendent was an awkward cuss, so he didn't have any life. So they put timbers up in one of the vestries down below, and the Sunday school met there until later the air raid shelter at Mackintosh's centre on Albank Road became available, and we went there. Very soon, the dates you can get from Mrs. Harvey, I would guess, very soon it became clear there was need for a services canteen, and so the Great Hall was taken up as a services canteen, and it was only closed one day in 4 years. Because we did a deal with the Norwich Union, whereby they paid us rent with the right to come in, we were able to overcome the wishes of the authorities to confiscate the hall for military purposes. The next move after that was the Special Constabulary. That division was needing a home. And so at one stage we had the youth club in the upstairs hall, and we had the youth club in the downstairs hall and the special constables upstairs. And they were there for quite a long time. I remember one occasion where we left the lights on. Unfortunately, the special constable who spotted it was a kind man, and he didn't do anything about it. Another mark which I think is worth noting, in the week of the big air raids in Norwich, I think I'm right in saying that both Cheverfield Road and Dereham Road were bombed, and the result was we had a very full service at Park Lane on the Sunday morning, and the Reverend Robert Green described it as a service for tired people. The services canteen went on for a very long time, and they were extraordinarily helpful, bringing a band up on occasion for a garden party which we wanted to have. One or two of them married our girls, and I think it was very useful to them. I have seen that hall crowded with people standing up trying to eat baked beans in that position, which is extremely difficult, but they managed. We had a team of probably 120, 130 volunteers who came on by rota, and never, as far as I remember, were we seriously let down. Another fact I remember, this is personal, but I happened to be the the first layman to preach in the new Parkland church. And I think I'm right in saying, but you can check this, that my grandson from Australia was the first baby to be christened there. You can check that from the records.
Yes.
The youth club was a great success, although it didn't please everybody. It was a great success because it drew all sorts and conditions of people. If the police met some troublemakers, they'd send them down to us, which they thought was very suitable. And I remember at one time we had 15 people on probation as members of the club. We were able at one stage to start a Sunday afternoon fellowship and get some of what we'd call the left-wingers in, people who never attended church under any circumstances. Now I remember when DeLacy Evans came to speak to them on occasion, I told him to take his collar off before he came, and he wasn't very pleased, but he did. And then from that they said, couldn't we have a Sunday outing? Well now, of course, today this is common. But in those days, I suspect if I'd arranged a Sunday outing, I should have been excommunicated or something. So I said, tell you what we'll do. I'll arrange to be appointed at a country chapel in the afternoon. We'll have a picnic tea somewhere. We'll go on to another country chapel. And then in the city, we'll just send upon somebody for coffee and buns. And that went on for quite a time. And these little country chapels found that there were people worshipping there who hadn't worshipped in that sense for a very long time. I think it gave a bit of a zip to them. One of the features of the youth club was a pantomime which the city engineer at the time was responsible for, and that was an astounding success. And I remember on one particular occasion, on the last Saturday of the pantomime, it was on for 4 days, Yarmouth was bombed. And there was an appeal for funds. So we decided to put the pantomime on the following Saturday for the Yarmouth funds. And again, we had a packed house, and no doubt those funds benefited. I don't remember the amounts clearly. Another factor at that time, that on one evening, the city engineer who was down there running the pantomime, his house was burgled, obviously I think by people who knew where he was.
I used to admire you tremendously. Didn't matter what had happened in the youth club, who was there. We went down for an epilogue in the room below, do you remember? Mm-hmm. And you persisted in the epilogue, didn't matter what interruptions there were and so on, but we had an epilogue.
Which brings us to a period in the epilogue when, as the epilogue was at the end, the club members got to know, so they sneaked out. So I promptly brought the epilogue in the middle, and there was a full attendance.
Yes. Yes. Have you been able to meet up with any of those problem lads in later life? The people you used to help in courts, for instance.
Oh yes, I had one taxi driver who took me to the station. We were talking about the boys, and we found that 3 of the 4 we named were divorced. In that short period, they're only youngsters, of course. Yeah. I've met some of the others from time to time, but not latterly, of course.
No.
Some have established themselves in other churches. For example, Ray Cubitt at Kettering, and Frank Blackford in Australia. I remember flying once in England with him when he was on leave to Manchester. I was asked the question the other day, as a matter of fact, could we see results? Well, the answer is very difficult to see results, but there are people here and there in the different churches in the circuit and in the district whom I meet who did in fact attend Parkland Club, and of course there are others who don't go anywhere. But we had a great success on one of the club anniversaries, whether it was the 25th or 40th, I don't know, and we had a special service, and a letter was sent to all the club members, and we had a very good turnout, and we had coffee afterwards. I remember that very well. Of course, we had our problems. There was a little damage done to property, but we were accused very often of damage we didn't do. We couldn't prove it, we knew it.
Trustees got a little excited, I remember.
Oh yes, from time to time they did.
You mentioned the pantomimes. Did Jim Beckett have anything to do with it?
Oh, he was mixed up with them, yes.
Yes. Did he write some of the script? You mentioned the engineer, and I hadn't realised that.
Oh, he was a city engineer. He was the key, the kingpin. Oh,
what
yes.
was his name?
Yeah, I've forgotten his name.
Ah. Yeah.
He was the kingpin.
Yes.
And after that occasion, we had concerts, and we had a pantomime. We also had a supper afterwards.
Yeah.
And perhaps as notable among the helpers in the youth club at one stage was the late Lord Mackintosh, who took his jacket off and worked with the rest of us very comfortably. I remember on one occasion when a police inspector, 6'6", was talking to one of the smaller club members and telling him to get out. The boy wouldn't pay any attention. So I went in and looked at him and said, out. He was out in a minute. Why, I don't know, but he did. We had 2 or 3 police court appearances, of course. Once where a boy was on a stabbing charge, and I was asked to go to the court. Well, I was away from Norwich most days, but fortunately, about 12 o'clock on a Monday, they said, could I go across the Shire Hall? So I went across, and I saw 5 of the club members in the witness box. They'd given their evidence, and the one who was on charge, of course, was there. And very fortunately, I was called on the telephone to the office, and I took my telephone call, came back, and when the defending solicitor got up, he said, you see, this very important man has come to testify for this lad. And it so happens, as a matter of fact, that he was one of the best boys there were. The fault was entirely on the other part. He just got off with probation, which wasn't too bad. And that, if I remember rightly, was the beginning of their attending youth centre worship. It just happened to coincide, and that was the beginning, I think. Apart from the youth club, the Sunday school was quite strong for quite a long time.
Polly would be there then.
Yes.
Polly Farrow.
Polly Farrow was their secretary, yes. And
Yeah.
Jim, when we decided to form a youth centre, that is to say, a youth club plus Sunday plus the rest, you see, and I took the leadership of the youth centre, and I said to Fern, look, I can't lead the Sunday school, which I was doing, you would take that on. So he took that on, and I took the afternoon group for these rough and tumbles, which was a very happy time, very successful time. Another feature was the part Park Lane took in the display in the Albert Hall for Methodist Association of Youth Clubs.
Yes.
The early displays from Norwich, although they were not purely Park Lane, they were inspired by Park Lane. I've got pictures there to show you. We did, for example, the Broads, including a yacht sailing down the Albert Hall. I remember the most effective was the cathedral,
Yes.
where the hall was completely blacked out, and there was imitation stained glass windows and light inside, and a rendering of part of the early little chorus. And that had followed a very rowdy thing, but you'd have heard a pin drop. And then later we did the House of Commons at one stage, and we did Nelson's flagship Victory. They were usually erected in the playground of the school near the Chapelfield Road Church. I forget which it was. They usually erected there.
Yeah, Bignold.
That's,
Yes.
is it Bignold?
Bignold, I think. Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
And then Macintosh's would kindly lend us a van to take the whole lot up to London, because we had to, and of course, bring it back. Now I remember one horrid occasion. I think it was when we were doing the Broads. We unloaded the stuff outside the Albert Hall. We'd got some haystacks and things, and one of the janitors came along and said, "That's that stuff in fireproofed." We said, no, well, Les, you can't bring it in. So we got a taxi, went up the road and bought some alum and a brush. And we gave all the stuff a good dose of alum and he let it in. But they were very fine days. We slept on the first occasion in a deep shelter in London. And one other wing of the deep shelter was occupied with some young Welsh club members with lovely voices, but not at 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Other times we stayed in people's homes. And the extraordinary is, of course, that the attendances now are higher than they were even when I finished with them.
Yes.
When they started, we used to fill the Albert Hall once on a Sunday morning. Then we filled it twice. And then now they even go further than that, which is extraordinary in view of the drop in the
decline in,
young people's attendance at churches, because I suppose 95% of those attending that function are in fact people between sort of 15 and 25. And it's quite a good demonstration, really, of what inspired genius can do. I remember on one occasion when the local preachers' meeting was meeting in the lecture hall, and they came through the great hall where the club was meeting, and sort of dance music on, and when I saw this chap walk through the lecture hall, to my joy, he was doing a jig through the lecture hall to the local preachers' meeting. Another feature was at one stage we had a meeting of about 7 or 8 members in one of the leaders' homes, and had to talk about local preaching, and this extended for 5 or 6 weeks. And I think 3 or 4 of those did in fact become local preachers, and are still preaching. And I remember there was a text, a rather pious text on the wall of the lecture hall, and there was strong objection on the part of the trustees to anyone painting it over. But it so happened we had a function on there which required something to go over, I forget what it was, something on a cloth, and that went on and remained. Nobody complained.
What is missing now, if anything, in our services?
Well, of course, the regrettable thing is I seldom get there. I'm preaching
I know, yes.
10 Sundays in a quarter,
Yes.
which means that I very seldom get there.
But what do you find when you go round that you say to yourself, good, why can't we?
That's a bit difficult to see, because then I'm listening to my own sermon.
Yes, correct.
But some churches, of course, doing well. Ferguson, for example,
Yes.
doing extraordinarily well.
Yeah.
But I thought an article which appeared in the church magazine some time ago, sounding doom and gloom, was a very unfortunate article. I told a super so. I don't think he shared my view, but garden parties which we had from time to time, actually in my own premises, Limetry Road, and they proved to be successful. That was where we had the military up with band, unasked.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, full-scale band.
Oh yes, a real show there. Yes, and then dancing afterwards. I think the church attendance seemed to decline when there was a distinct left-wing tendency in the pulpit. I think that's a fair comment. But last time I'd been, I hadn't sort of felt it was too discouraging. I was glad to note the last magazine did suggest a tiny bit of encouragement.
Yes.
You were bound to get it, because we lose the Eton people who naturally go to the circuit church. That's where we miss out.
Yes.
On the other hand, presumably we get a number of university undergraduates. And another factor, of course, you may have had this mentioned later, was the purchase of number 79 Park Lane,
Yes.
which was quite accidental. I don't know if you knew that.
No, we were talking coming along, saying we must get Tim to tell us about the origins of 79, because it was very much...
It was one of the rare occasions when I attended Park Lane. And as I came out, I saw the notice up for sale. And when I got back, I rang Peter Lemon and told him this. And Peter was never slow to act. The next morning he came through on the phone, he'd seen the people, and he found, to our delight in a way, it wasn't merely a house, it was a number of flats. And within, I think, about 6 weeks, we got promises of £16,000 on loan from members of the church. And backed by that, we were able to get the rest of the finance, and so within about 6 weeks or 2 months, we had bought the place. And my impression is that it's proved its worth. That it's a good thing, of course, to have some place to offer youngsters. And I gather some who, although they don't come as Methodists there, do support the church services. And the one advantage is, of course, if ever we did want to expand, that space is ours.
Yeah.
Perhaps I was started by the District Youth Council with the idea of providing training holidays for youngsters who hadn't been allowed to go to the coast during the war because there was a 5-mile barrier there.
The minister that's often referred to by some of the older people, whom I never met, was a Mr. Perry.
Oh yes, John J. Perry. He was the one I had to tell to take his collar off when he talked to my group.
Oh, that was
That's the one. He was a very devout, but you know, a very orthodox man.
Yeah.
I think the couple who were most helpful to me personally were Dowson and his wife, because that was when my wife was very ill, and never a Saturday afternoon passed but one or other of them would come up and see us. And then, when my grandson came for christening, she offered to look after the other child so that christening could take place. They were very good. And I've seen him since, heard him preach since.
Yes, he was at Park Lane, of course, yes.
That's right, yes. I've heard him preach in his own church too.
Yes. Incidentally, we haven't mentioned Winnie and the club.
Who?
Winnie, your late wife.
Oh no, that's right. Well, she started the Old People's Club.
That's right.
Just at the time when there was a general move, and before the local authorities really had them, but she got in touch with City Hall, got their full support, and of course she started it and continued to run it until she unfortunately had to give up. But there was no doubt that was a great success.
Oh, yes.
Lionel originally attended Park Lane when we lived in Lime Tree Road. Then he opened a shop, lived on the shop, and attended Mile Cross for quite a time.
Yes.
And then eventually he bought a house in Lime Tree Road and came back. And just at that time, I don't know whether John Fern had died or something, but anyway, we were in need of a superintendent, so he took over for it. Not for very long, for a while. And then when he came to Wroxham, he became a deacon of the United Reformed Church. Fred Lloyd was a very friendly man, but rather a nervous man who was not keen to face up to unpleasant facts. But he and his wife, I think, were very popular.
Yes.
That's my impression.
Yes. Yes. I didn't know the name of the first one. You mentioned him, the double barrel name. What was that? Evans, wasn't it? Lacey Evans.
Dear Lacey Evans, yes.
Yes. Didn't know much about him at all.
No, well, he was, I suppose I should put it, he was very much a traditional, old-fashioned Methodist minister. I think that's how I should put it.
Yes, yes. How do you see the future?
Well, I think if the members really say, look, this has got to have a future, I don't see why they shouldn't. After all, they are on the doorstep of the university. They will get an introduction to all the incoming students and to the lecturers, and there's still a large population around there. But I think that they've got to be active about it. I remember during the war, when evening services were very poorly attended, and then there was called a year of evangelism. Well, we did nothing about that, but I said to the minister, shortly before the end of that year, and I wanted to do something about that. He said, well, just, I said, look, let's have services of a different type each Sunday night. Let's distribute brochures widely, which the youth club did, by the way, and we would have a film, we would have drama, we'd have a Christian evening, a straight sermon and so on, and I think the congregations about doubled during that period. Although it was during the war period. But it doesn't need initiative, that's what it really amounts to, you see. And of course you do need inspired preaching. I'm not a good judge because I'm too radical and I've been preaching myself too long, you see. Apart from which I find it very difficult to hear sometimes because I remember once, I think it was your present minister once, stood and addressed that thing about on the side of the wall. Well, I didn't hear a word. But I don't see why it shouldn't have a future, but it does need effort on the part of the members. And I think it needs sort of lively services. I see the evening service has been dropped now. Yes, I always felt the timing of those circuit services was wrong. If they'd have had those at 7:30, so that the churches could have a 3/4 hour service at 6:30, I think they would have got more to the other service. And at the same time, I think some people who like to come regularly would have stuck by the main service.
Yes.
But that wasn't the policy, so. Of course, here in this village, there used to be 2 Methodist churches.
Really?
One in the Martham circuit and one in the Norwich circuit. And they're both out now. There used to be one at Wroxham, and I preached there, and they closed it. So the nearest one now, as a matter of fact, is Ludham. But I do have a monthly group here in the winter. It started with Methodists, but the interesting thing is now that 3 of the best attenders don't go anywhere, and a couple of the others are Anglicans. And then I match that off with another one for men only, where there are no religious ties at all. And we get about a dozen or 15 people. It's for free discussion, really.
Yes. Yes.
We've been very lucky in getting people, and we've had 2 chairmen of districts, we've had connectional secretaries, we've had superintendents, and quite a lot. But of course they are elderly people.
Yes.